Could you everybody? Coach Rab here. Welcome to another Kilted Chess Noob episode. No, I'm not a chess coach, not even close. I'm a health and wellness coach that happens to love chess. And today's episode is celebrating a 2000 game rating that I achieved just this week. So, when you finish a game, the engine does a game review. You get accuracy, which the top players probably focus more on. That's how close to the best moves you played. And then game rating is, I treat it as I played like a. So since I've been trying to improve, my early days I was playing like a 700, playing like an 800. And in recent days I've been getting higher and higher scores, which is pretty good. I've started playing the London opening for white, and it's quite a systematic, look at my hair there. It's quite a systematic approach where you build up. They say it can be quite boring because you play the same first few moves, but I'm okay with it. I quite enjoy it. And I've been getting some good success with it, and I've noticed my game rating's got much higher because it puts you in a good position, and from that position onwards, a lot of your moves are a bit more straightforward, but they seem very clever. I'm enjoying it anyway. I was playing as part of a tournament, and my opponent is similar level to my own, and we've played in tournaments before. We have very, very intense games, and this game was no different. There was a couple of times where I definitely had the advantage and made a boo-boo, which I will learn from. I can see the boo-boo now. It's one of those things that after the fact, you can, after the fact, you're like, oh yeah, that's probably what I should have done. But at the time, you just don't always see things. So I'm going to take you through. Like I said, I was playing the London opening for white, which starts off with d4. My opponent pushed their pawn to meet it in the middle, and then I bring the bishop out, and this is your typical London setup, okay? My opponent pushed out his pawn. I think he was planning to I think he did actually, fianchetto his bishop, which means basically take control of the diagonal. Because I was playing the London, I secured it with my pawn. That's all standard stuff. He pushed the pawn, created a nice pawn chain in the middle. I brought my knight out, and obviously I'll then secure this soon as well. He fianchettoed, so now he has eyes on here, but it has a defender anyway, so I'm not too panicky. I brought a second defender in. This is all just basically the opening, nothing too crazy so far. So my knight is defending and the pawn's defending at the moment, so happy there. He brought his knight out, clearly preparing to castle. I secured my pawn chain, just adding another defender, because when you're playing the London, these two squares, e4 and e5, become the key talking points, if you like. You have to protect these at all costs. This knight's protecting here. That's all this barrage protecting the e5 square. So it's all called e4 and e5 when you're playing the London. He castled. I brought my bishop out, which is the last part of the developing move of the London, putting lots of eyes up into the corner. He pushed the pawn. I'm guessing he was bringing the bishop out again. I can't remember exactly what happened at this point in the game. It's more the middle game I'm going to get to. I castled. Now, the computer thinks that was a mistake. It's itching for me to push this pawn, which I do push that pawn. I think it's either 2 moves down the line. I think I was just going for safety. And again, this will, had I done that move, I would have got a higher accuracy, but so be it. One of the key reasons for pushing this pawn as well, when you've still got this rook in the corner here, is you can, with all the eyes with all these eyes pointing down this corner, you can get quite attack, and obviously then queen as well. You've got options for Greek gift as well, if so long as there's nothing, no knight on that square. But anyway, it's certainly a move I play further along the lines. So I castled. He fianchettoed again. He's got eyes onto this square, but at that time I wasn't too concerned because his pawn, he had a blocked view. Bishops are great for long range artillery, but they kind of need the centre to be open, and at the moment that centre was not open, so I wasn't too concerned. I brought my rook out to get light eyes down the middle. He jumped attacking my centre, and I eventually pushed this pawn. Now that, when I've already castled, that particular move, did the computer like that actually? Oh, the computer did like that. Oh, I'll give them dues. Okay, fair enough. Okay. Normally I would have played that if I hadn't castled, but actually, yeah. Now, oh, that's right. This is where it starts to change or get interesting from my perspective. So I pushed that pawn because what I was trying to do is he had this solid kind of fortress here, and he's got his king was well defended and this in the middle. But so I pushed this pawn, and this is where I'm pretty sure he makes a boo-boo, because if I get to push this pawn forwards, which I'm pretty sure I did, that's going to cause real problems for him. So that's what my goal was, because then what I wanted to push this pawn eventually, he takes, and I'll get my knight in, and that really starts to cause problems in his position. And what he then did was he then started to attack this bishop. The mistake I made, I should have just pulled it back to here. But at that time, I was wondering whether he was then going to start pulling any, or do any funny business coming down that side. So I ended up pulling the bishop all the way back, which the computer didn't like, but so be it. If you see the analysis bar, I'm plus 1.05, but yeah, I'm slightly winning there, right? But this is when he made his boo-boo, because he brings his knight out, okay? But this has then allowed me to push that pawn, which I did. That was the first mistake, because when you're playing an opponent that's quite a strong player, it comes down to mistakes rather than what you do well. Equally, like I then make mistakes further on in the game, and I can't remember what famous chess person said, is that the person to win is the one that plays the second to last mistake, or something like that. Because it's all about capitalising on errors rather than just on... It's capitalising on errors, not just good play. That's basically what we're trying to achieve. So I managed to get that pawn, he took, and that allowed my knight to get in. If you see the analysis bar there, so we're up 2.8. So that's when I was able to then start getting some pressure. My queen then had eyes on that pawn, and it was undefended. He brought his knight across. I think it wanted him to kick out my knight there. So I got in with the queen. He pushes that forward. Now this is where I was doing some calculation, because I was like, oh, I didn't know whether to bring the knight all the way back. But then I remember at the time thinking, well, if I can jump in here, if he was to take, I could then get his knight. That's what I thought was going to happen. That's what I was calculating. So I jumped in there. I was fully expecting him to take it, but what I didn't spot was this knight take my bishop move. I was like, which also attacked my queen. So when it first happened, I was like, oh, I was kind of a bit stressed, and then I realised, oh, wait a minute, my knight also attacks his knight. So I just gobbled that back up. That was fine. So again, the analysis bar is 3.6. So at this point, I felt like I was in the driving seat. Now he brought down offering the queen trade. Now, when it got into this position, I was looking around. I was thinking, I didn't want to take the foot off the gas. I ended up accepting the queen trade, but afterwards, I wasn't sure. So when I was going to retreat the queen, I wasn't sure where to retreat the queen to. I was thinking, if I was to retreat, where would it come back? I didn't want to lose attacking momentum. But as it turns out, this would have been the magic square to come back. But so be it. So he gobbled up, and then I then started dismantling. So this is where I started to then take apart his middle. So I jumped in, swallowed up that pawn there. So I've got this nice pawn pyramid, if you see that here. And at this point in the game, I was like, yes, everything's going well. I had a good structure. I was ahead on material. I think it was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No, he has 5 pieces, but I think I've got more pawns in him. Yeah. Well, yeah, I'm +2. So I remember thinking, right, I know, and his king was still kind of buried in the corner, but I remember thinking, right, I'm in the driving seat. He pushed his pawn coming in there, and from that position there, I managed to jump up, threatening his rook, but also looking to attack that pawn, and then that would just leave that isolated pawn there. I was thinking, right, I'm completely in driving seat. He naturally moved his rook because he didn't want to lose that, so then I gobbled up the pawn. This is where then the error started to happen. So at this point, I thought I was completely secure. He pushes the pawn down the center here, and I push a pawn up to meet it because I was looking at, I've got 1, 2, and I thought if he took, I could either take with the rook or the knight, and I felt like I was in the driving seat. But from that position there, yeah, so I pushed forward. He then went to chase out my knight. I then offered up the fork for his bishop and then this pawn. And from that position there, he pushed his pawn, so he's got eyes coming down. I then took his bishop. He recaptured with the knight. Now, from this position, this is where this pawn was hanging, if you like, right? It's got no defenders right now, and this would come straight down, and I wouldn't be able to do anything about it. So I was like, ugh. And if I tried to push it, if I pushed it, he would just recapture. And I did consider that, but then it would come right down, and I was like, I don't like that. So I found this move, taking that pawn with my knight, which simultaneously defended that, right? So I was quite happy. But what I should have done was push this initially, because even if he had come down and taken that, what was going to be the move? Let's just see what would have been the move if I hadn't. If I had pushed... Oh, wait, hold on. He's there. I took, he recaptured, and then it wanted me to push, I think. I don't know why he wouldn't just take that. Nothing's... Oh wait, capture there, and then he would just retreat. Ah, right, okay, so he wouldn't have got much from that, he would have just got the pawn, fair enough. And then I would have pinned, okay, fair enough. I didn't see that at the time. So, take, and he was eyeing that up. Now, what then happened was, his knight jumped in there, which I recaptured, and it allowed this bishop in. Now, this was where I started to panic. I was like, oh no, because at the time, I forgot that this pawn was being defended by the knight. What I was looking at, I was like, oh no, what if he takes that, and then there's nothing I can do, he's going to then gobble my rook next. I completely forgot that was protecting it. So I was thinking, right, well, how do I then protect my rook? I was just thinking, well, that pawn's going to get eaten. So I remember thinking, well, if I can get my bishop out, this rook will defend the rook, and that's what was going through my head. But the problem was, and this is the key thing in the position, is this square was very, very important to guard, right? And if I had pushed this pawn, and if I just ignored everything else, pushed the pawn, this bishop would have had eyes on that corner, and then he wouldn't have been able to achieve what he then gets in a moment. So from that position, I brought my bishop out, thinking, right, okay, time to get down to business. He swoops right across, and this is a real problem, because if you see, we've got here, we've got this coming, and I'm trapped in the corner here. I was like, oh no. So from that position there, I pushed the pawn at that point, because I was thinking, right, well, I'm going to make him make a decision, because if he was to fly down here, at least the king can take. But he wasn't quite ready for that yet, so he pushed his rook. And I think I remember at the time, I don't know why I didn't just move, because if he had flew down, I would have done here. Oh, that's why, because then I thought he would push, move me away, and then gobble my rook. That's what I thought would have happened. And I would have just gobbled back, but for some, I think when I calculated it, I didn't like what it was going. So instead, I brought this rook up to the middle here, and I think I can't remember if I was planning, you know, well, that would have been okay actually. Had I got the option, I could have thrown a check in and then got that bishop. It would just be a trade-off. I never really considered that one. As it is, he pulled his king away from that. Maybe he saw that danger. Now I was looking at all this position here. I was like, well, how did I get out the corner? Because this was coming, and these were coming down too. And I was like, oh, this is not good. This is not good. I was sweating. So what I did was I noticed that this square would be a forking square, and I thought, right, well, I just need to go on the offense right now. And I was waiting for him to bring this across to then get the checkmate. That's what I was looking at. So I thought, well, if he brings that across, I'll then get a fork, and at least I'll be able to get rid of one of them, and then it won't be a checkmate from that rook straight away. But for some reason, my opponent sacked it straight off the bat. So I was like, well, I'll take that rook. But then the problem I've got is his follow-up traps me in the corner, and this is coming. And I was like, oh my God. I was in a lot of hot water. I was +9 at that point, but I'm stuck in the corner and checkmate was coming. So I'm like, how am I going to get out of this one? Luckily, I still had that check to come in, which was protected by the bishop. So managed to get in the check there. Now, I was running a bunch of calculations based on where he moved, because I had a whole bunch of things where I thought, well, at least if I could get this pawn up, and eventually, I think I was planning, there was a bunch of ways I was going to move my knight, and eventually my knight was going to end up here, hopefully protected by the pawn. He moved his king out the way. I just jumped straight. Yeah, so when I was doing the calculations initially, I think if he was going to move here, I think I was going to do a discovered check. Was it that way? No. Was it? No, it wasn't that way. There was some calculation I did where I was it just that maybe? Oh yeah, that was the initial calculation I had, because then his king was going to be blocking it. So I remember thinking, right, well, if we get up there, and then that way it was going to protect that corner. That's what I was originally planning, but never quite panned out that way. So jumped in check, he moved in there, and I found this other move where you forget, because if you jump a pawn 2 spaces in one go, you risk en passant when they take right back, right? And some people just cannot resist it. But then I realised that if he does that, if he en passants me, right, I've then got my escape square, so that was fine. And I actually found this other checkmate. If he blocked, if he just pushed forwards, there was another checkmate I had. Was it here? I think it was check. And it was stopping. And I remember thinking, this is why I didn't go for it too much, but I remember thinking if he'd gone here, was it going to be check? Oh, there was a block. I never considered. Oh yeah, check, block, there, mate. So that's, yeah, I remember planning that. I remember thinking if he made the wrong move, he was going to be mine if he did that. So as it is, I jumped up and he did basically en passant me, and that allowed me to have an escape square. Now, I didn't go for it right away. Well, the engine wanted me to push my pawn. I remember thinking I wanted to save my rook. So I saved that, knowing full well that when that comes, I have my escape square, so I was happy with that. It wanted me to put a check in, but so be it. He then comes the check. I jumped up. He pushed his pawn because he's securing this end here. At this point, I don't think I was too worried, because I remember thinking that I had enough action, enough clout to deal with it. I pushed the pawn for a little check because I remember thinking this was going to be my promotion pawn, and so I was just trying to get that as close to the end zone as I could. He brought himself closer, and now at this point, what did I do here? Oh yeah, I offered the rook sack, and he took it from here. So he put me in check first, which I took. He then gobbled, which I salvaged. He put me in check again, which I secured myself in. And at this point, it was like, right, it's all she wrote. He brought himself down that way. Now, that was then the mistake, because what I was calculating here was that he has to keep an eye on this pawn, otherwise it's going to promote, and this was going to have to come back at some point. And I thought he was going to pull it back to here. I thought he was going to pull it back to here, protecting that square. And if that was the case, my goal was to, pull the king up. This was protected by here. And if he had gone up there, I think I was planning to sack. Oh, it wasn't. Yeah, oh my God. I think I would have just done that, moved, gobbled up the last pawn, and then I think, knowing me and my style of play, I would have maybe even given this pawn up, and I would have maybe just secured here. Oh, it's him to move, isn't it? I probably would have just secured the line, let him take, and then I would have just ran that up the board and got my queen. That's probably what I would have done, knowing me. Just because when you've been playing an intense game, sometimes you just want the easiest finish possible, even if it's not the most efficient. But as it is, he brought his king down. I pushed the pawn one more time, and then my opponent resigned because he realised there's nothing he can do to stop that crowning and becoming another queen. So, game rating of 2000. My opponent's a very, very good player, which brings out the best in you. I'm in a return game against him, and on the back foot, I don't see myself winning the next one. So, but this one, I really, really enjoyed it. You came away from it going, woof, and I need to go and have a lie down for half an hour. But it was a really, really good game. And like I say, the game rating of 2000, I've only ever achieved that once before. So to achieve that again, I was like, right, my study and everything is going in the right direction. So this is a journey. It's going to take a lot of time, as it has been, but I'm enjoying the process. And when you get little wins like that, it does make you feel quite good. It is important to remember as well, though, that this was a daily game, which means I had a lot of time to slave over each move. Now I'm just going to come back to this corner position, for example, because was it this position here before I got the... Yeah, so it was this one here. So this just before this move, so that was on move 28. I spent a lot of time staring at that. Now, had this been a rapid game, I don't know if I would have found that move. A rapid game, you've got a time restraint, and I think I would have made a boo-boo, and before I knew it, I would have done the wrong move. I don't know what I would have done. Maybe tried to escape here. Before I know it would have been this. Oh, whatever, I don't know. I think I would have made a boo-boo, but because I had a lot of time, I was able to really kind of analyse the position. It allowed me to find that move. If I hadn't found that, then so be it. But time restraints are something that eventually I want to get so good that I can calculate much quicker and yeah, play well, play better, whatever. Thank you as always, everyone. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next episode. Bye bye.